Turns out I can do in 2 weeks what usually takes me 6 months. If you've seen my last video, you know that I've been in a little bit of a rush to make lots of new paintings for the other art fair that I'm going to take part on very shortly. It will already be over by the time you see this though. And there are 4 large pieces that are probably the favourite ones of the new pieces that I made. This one being one of them. And I'm going to show you the whole process from start to finish all in this video. I'm starting this painting off like I have done most of the other paintings in the series, by adding some soft pastels, and they're water soluble, so if I go over with a clear acrylic medium they kind of dissolve and create these really beautiful painterly kind of washed effects, and I love that unpredictability, and it gives a nice base that's already got a lot of texture. And then I go over with some acrylic paint pen. I really love the Liquitex ones, the really chunky nibs. And then after that, I'm going to start going over with some acrylic paint. I usually like leaving my paintings for a little while. So I paint on them a little bit and then I put them aside and look at them with fresh eyes after a little while. But here I didn't have time to do this because I only had really a few days to paint, because I then also need to let it dry, isolation coat, varnish and so on. And that also, that usually needs quite a lot of drying time, which I didn't really have, so I cut that a bit short. But the actual painting time was only a week for everything, maybe a little bit more. And I really love that spontaneity that you can see in some of the pieces, like, because I don't have that many layers, even though I really like working in layers, and I did work in layers here, I didn't have time to think too much about building the layers. It's more a case of adding all the energy in and then taking some of it back and being very intentional with my placements. But also because this series is very much about how raw can I leave the paintings and still like them? How can I not make them too perfect? This actually worked really in my favour here, because I do want some of that rawness. I do want them to not look polished, and I do want them to have some of that initial energy still in the paintings. This next one here, I'm starting exactly the same, just with a different colour palettes. So I'm adding some soft pastels, and I'm really trying to be quite wild and raw with my marks. Not overthinking and just trying to get a little bit of variety. So you see I've done some continuous lines, and then I've also done these smaller short dash marks. And I'm going over with my fluid acrylic medium again, and then I'm adding some more acrylic paint pen. So in these initial marks I really try and be very loose, just get a lot of variety and a lot of texture in these early layers. I often also like to start with quite vibrant colours. On this one I wanted to do it a little bit different because most of the others are very vibrant, so I wanted to start this one a little bit more muted with these browns and the blue. I'm also adding some Stabilo Woody pencils. That's the purple and the red. They're actually made for kids, so they're kind of chunky crayons or pencils, but I really love those for making marks on a larger scale because they're thicker than your standard coloured pencil. Then again, I'm going over with acrylic paint. I'm trying to keep it quite muted with the brown, and then I'm actually scraping away a lot of the paint that I've just added with a catalyst wedge. I really love working with that. And then I don't want them to be too dark, so I'm adding some more light colour, and again scraping into that a little bit. And I'm using a catalyst mini blade here. I also always love the contrast of some more visible marks and then some really soft blended edges, which is what I'm doing here with this kind of smaller brush. And I did want to add a touch of more vibrancy, so I'm adding some red here. Another painting and the same method, soft pastels first, a different color palette. So here I'm going with greens and browns, and I often like to start with different colors to what I know I'm going to add later. So if I'm going to add blues, for example, I might start with an orange with a complementary color.
If you like this video, consider subscribing.
More acrylic pen, acrylic paint pen, you already know the drill. And you can actually see to the left and the right that I'm not working on one painting from beginning to end. I like to work on a few canvases at the same time. So I'm doing, for example, all the soft pastel and fixing them with the acrylic medium, and then I switch to another canvas and do the same again and switch to another canvas, and that allows me for that piece to dry, so I can then, after I've finished the other ones, go back to that painting and continue working on it without it being too wet. And another thing is that it just really helps me to see it with fresh eyes when I come back to that particular painting. And I've worked on a few others in the meantime. And also, it might give me some different ideas. For example, I'm playing with something on one canvas and I think, oh, I want to try that on a different one as well. Maybe I'll use some different colors, but the same kind of marks, the same kind of technique. Or I really like a color and then I want to add that to a different canvas. So they all kind of play off each other, which then in turn also helps the different paintings to be cohesive as one body of work without being too similar. This is the last painting I'm doing for today, and they're all the same size. They're 70 by 80 centimeters, and I've actually found that to be a very interesting format. So it's almost a square. I really love working on a square, but I do find it gets a little bit repetitive working on square all the time. And this one's almost a square, but it kind of has nicer proportions because they're not all equal sides. So it makes it a little bit more interesting. And I actually found it quite easy to work on this format in terms of composition. So I've added the soft pastels, added the acrylic medium to kind of blend all the soft pastel and also fix it in place. And then I'm going over with the acrylic paint pens and some more of the Stabilo Woodies, which you can see that green, cool green color here. And the Stabilo Woodies are actually also water soluble. So I go over with the acrylic medium as well here. And that kind of blends them a little bit. They don't dissolve as much as the soft pastels do. So you see a little bit more of the initial marks, and the pigment doesn't spread as much as with the soft pastels. I really love the kind of wild pink marks underneath, so I don't want to cover up too much here. So I'm just adding a little bit of calm with this light pink, and then I wanted to add a little more, something kind of glowing. I always love when you add yellow as a contrast, and it kind of feels like there's a light turned on inside the paintings. And then I'm just emphasizing a few of those brown marks, making some of them a little bit less textured and also just making the color a little bit more uniform, just so they add a bit of contrast to the other marks that are on this painting. All of these 4 paintings will be on my website. I'll link it down below if they haven't sold yet. I'm also going to be at Manchester Art Fair end of November. I'll put the dates in the description box if you're interested. If you're new to acrylic painting and you would like to get started, I do have a free guide that tells you everything you need to get started, because it's quite overwhelming, all the supplies that are out there. If you're interested in that, I'll put a link down in the description box. It's a completely free guide. You just have to put in your email address. If you want to see some more of the paintings that I had to do in quite the rush, I'll link the video from last week down below, and there are more paintings that I did in that time, and there'll be another video next week. Until then, thank you and bye bye.